I am Grady Cullen in the CapeCod.com News Center. Welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest from the Steamship Authority. Bob, do you mind just introducing yourself for our listeners?
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Davis. I'm the general manager of the Steamship Authority.
Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. We want to talk a lot about some of the new upgrade projects going on for the Steamship Authority. First and foremost, want to talk about some new ships that are joining the fleet, but also want to touch on the Woods Hole reconstruction project, as well as maybe some general goals for 2025. But yeah, we recently had the commissioning of the MV Barnstable, one of three new ships that are going to be joining in the fleet, as well as selling off the old, I believe it was the Katema and the Gay Head. And so I just wanted to
Correct.
ask a little bit about how you guys are feeling with the MV Barnstable. When is it going to be doing its first trips? Can you tell us a little bit more about how that new acquisition process is going for those three sister ships?
Well, we're excited about the opportunity to be able to update our fleet um, to standardize our vessels. This will be the first time that we have not only two vessels the same, but three vessels the same. So, from a training standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from servicing and parts inventory, it's going to be a great benefit to the authority going forward. They are replacing the motor vessel Gayhead and motor vessel Katema, which, while they were similar, they weren't sister ships, and they served us well. The Katema was acquired back in 1986, and then the Gayhead was acquired the following year in '87. So they served us for quite some time, but it was time to update the fleet, and those two ended up being the ones that a marine surveyor had identified as having the most likely to need to be replaced sooner.
Sure. Is it like was that like a good run? Like about 30 years? Is that like, yeah, we got our money's worth out of that vessel, or did they get acquired and they were already had some service life on them that was eaten up? Like can you give us a review essentially of how those ships performed?
Yeah, so those two ships, the Katama and the Gayhead, were former offshore supply vessels, much like the three vessels that we have coming. Those were offshore supply vessels that we've converted, as we did with the Katama, Gayhead, and Sanctity. So all in all, the Gayhead and Katama are approximately 43 years old right now, and to be able to make sure we have a reliable service, we felt is necessary to be updating them. We typically look at our steel vessels as, if we look at a 50-year useful life out of our vessels, and we have 10 steel vessels, we should be looking to be replacing one vessel every 5 years as part of our capital plan. So.
All right. Now, as well, we went online and asked a few people if they had any questions for you guys ahead of this interview. We did get a response from BF Flag. They wanted to ask, why get a new boat? Isn't it a lot of money? Can you just tell us a little bit more about why it is you guys are looking to do? Is it just about standardizing the maintenance process, a little bit more about trying to improve the fleet's safety and stuff like that? But how
Yeah,
will it improve kind of rideability going forward? Do you think passengers will even really notice that it's a new ship? How is it maybe different from a very personal standpoint for the people riding?
yeah. So they will be very noticeable that they are different than the vessels that they're replacing. They are open deck vessels, but beyond that, the similarity ends. These vessels are, highly maneuverable. They have three thrusters on the vessel, on each one of the vessels, uh, and the vessels that they're replacing only had one bow thruster. The thrusters are quite powerful. So in terms of docking and that, we expect that to be a better situation for our crews in terms of docking under different weather conditions. The vessels themselves are slightly larger than the vessels they're replacing. So we expect to be able to get an extra couple trucks on each one of those trips to be able to utilize, the demand for freight on the islands seems to be growing every year, and this is a way for us to meet that. Um,
All right, awesome. And now, so I think I spoke with some other officials earlier, but there's like, there's like a sweet spot for the number of vessels in the fleet where it's like, if you, sure, you can have like 100 ships, but now you have to maintain 100 ships. So are we about at the right number now, you think? Is this a good, or is the Steamship Authority maybe still interested in either selling off a few ships or maybe acquiring some more, or are we about where you want to be?
Well, we'll continue to look at, at the vessel useful life of all of us vessels. We do have a very rigorous maintenance program, even though most of our vessels only require a dry dock every twice in a 5-year period, no more than 3 years apart. We have taken the approach now for the past dozen years or so of dry docking our vessels every 2 years because we feel it's necessary to be able to maintain those hulls, maintain the propulsion systems, the steering, the rudders, and things like that. So we've been doing more active in terms of our coating maintenance that we've done in the past, and I think it'll go a long way to maintaining these vessels to get to those useful lives. But we will be looking at updating the useful life survey. As we stand right now, we do have a vessel now that once the Aquinnah and Monomoy arrive, that we will have a spare vessel at all times of the year. In the event that something does come up.
All right, awesome. And but I also want to talk about the Woods Hole Terminal reconstruction project. But before we move on, do you have a rough timeline of when we can expect these new vessels to be ready to go, involved in trips?
Yeah, so the Barnstable remains in Fairhaven. We've been going through inspections with the Coast Guard, and we're addressing a couple items that have come up. We expect all that to be finalized sometime next week, middle of the week, and then we'll be bringing the vessel down to Hyannis to be able to put on the run. And we are looking at crews have gone out on the vessel for some training, but we need to make sure we get enough training. We've been doing orientations at the dock, but we need to get more in-service training.
Hmm. All
The
right.
the Aquinnah, meanwhile, is nearing the point where we'll be able to do there's a stability test that the Coast Guard requires us to do. We'll be doing that hopefully next couple weeks. And then once that happens, we'll be looking to schedule sea trials and Coast Guard sea trials in anticipation of bringing that vessel up north. And the Monomoy right now is in two pieces. We cut 24 feet out of the mid bodies of all these vessels. The Monomoy is split in two at the moment, and they're working on bulkheads that need to be installed, and they'll be put back together. And we hope to have that vessel. I think the timeline for that is June sometime.
All right, awesome. Can I ask real quick, what is the benefits for removing out that section? Is it just because it makes it more maneuverable and easier to dock with the terminals that we have, or is it for some other reason? What's the removal process for?
1 second, hold on.
Oh, sure. Yeah, take your time.
Sorry. Um, so the vessels themselves, when we purchased the vessels, were 240 feet long, but they had a square stern, and so in order to match up with the transfer bridge and the fendering system, we had to add a radius on the stern in order to match up. Once we do that, it was exceeding the 245-foot limit that we have in Hyannis, so we had to cut out a portion of the mid body in order to keep it to 245 feet.
Mhm. All right, awesome. Will there be like party poppers? Are you gonna crack the champagne bottle against the hole when they're finally going on their first voyage, or is this gonna be more of a slower kind of introduction for some of these ships rather than a big bombastic celebration the day of?
No, well, we already did the commissioning ceremony, and yes, there was a bottle of champagne that was done for the commissioning. We expect when the Aquinnah comes and after we go through the local inspections as well, that we'll be doing a similar commissioning for that vessel. Will probably be on the Vineyard. And then we haven't gotten that far on when or where we'll be doing the Monomoy, but I would anticipate that we'd be doing something for that vessel as well.
All right, sounds good. All right, so onto the Woods Hole reconstruction project. You have the terminal upgrades that are going to be going out there. Do you mind giving us a quick, just a general update of how they're going? Do you have any kind of rough timelines for when the reconstruction project is supposed to be wrapped up, and just maybe highlight some of the improvements that are going to be expected for people who are experiencing actually riding on the Steamship Authority and using that terminal on maybe even a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So right now they're in the middle of building the utility building. At that site, it replaces the old freight shed that was there, and that's for storage of equipment and for some of the employees' areas. Um, they just, as of yesterday, finished installing the last of the geopiers that are necessary before we can pour the foundation, start doing the foundation for the terminal building. So that will be starting next month or so. The timeline for both buildings to be completed is early in the spring of 2026. So,
All right. We will stay tuned and look forward to kind of seeing that all come together. Now, in general, of course, we're just kicking off 2025, and I was wondering if you had like a general review that you wanted to do, your review of some of the things you're maybe most proud of from 2024, as well as maybe some of the big goals that are being lined up at the Steamship Authorities, the Board of Governors, or anybody else who's in leadership roles there, what you're hoping to accomplish in 2025, or maybe some of the biggest challenges that you're dreading facing in 2025. But what is in store for the Steamship Authority from that standpoint?
yeah, so I think for 2024, the big item that we had was the work that was being done on the Barnstable and Aquinnah, and then towards the end of the year, the Monomoy. It's we've never had three vessels coming online in such a short period of time, so it's been a big undertaking to get this done. But I think at the end we're going to see three vessels for what it would essentially cost us to build one new one. The cost of these vessels have skyrocketed, and so I think it's the value is there. So, but in terms of other projects, we are working on a replacement for our reservation system, which we brought in back in the mid 90s. So we have a request for responses out right now. We've had a number of firms that are looking over that, asking some questions, and we expect to be awarding that later this spring. And then a timeline for sometime in 2026 to have that system in place. So, um,
All right. Yeah.
so, some big projects going on.
That's lovely. I did want to ask about the reservation system. I know that there's been a lot of technological improvements for the Steamship Authority over the past couple of years with like some new website plans and stuff. I wanted to touch on that later. But yeah, in we do. I have the printout now. Reservations are you guys are getting ready for summer reservations. I know we're all cold and chilly mid January,
Yeah,
but for you guys, you're like already thinking of the summer.
yeah,
So we have lined up this new Head Start week. For the first time. It's going to be for non-transferable reservations. Is that kind of just a way to help alleviate maybe some technical stuff, or was that more about like a user-based decision when it comes to? So January 14th is technically it's just for Head Start, but that's when reservations begin opening. That's where
yeah.
people live on the islands. So yeah, can you kind of give us a rundown of how the reservations go? Maybe some of the things that you've been getting ready for to help avoid some of the technical difficulties and crashes of years past. What you're expecting for this time around?
Yeah. So we've actually been working on this since early in the fall. The big piece of this is that we have to have the shippers that come and go every day um, provide us with what their requests are for the summer period. We've already worked on putting those schedules together because we need to get that established before we open up for any other reservations. We're at that point now where we can do that. As you said, we had non-transferable Head Start reservations starting on the 14th. This actually is the second year that we had the non-transferable for a couple days, and then followed that with a time where the Head Start that are transferable. So island residents, if they have family members coming to visit them in the summertime, they can make a reservation in their name, or so we had that first. Sorry. And then we open up for the general internet opening for Nantucket, which is on the 28th. And then for the vineyard the following week on March 4th, February 4th. And so it's a busy time of year for our IT group. They've been doing load testing. You mentioned about some of the issues we've had in the past. Sorry, apologize. Um, and so they've been doing testing the systems, all pieces of it, the reservation system, our website, our credit card service, to make sure that we have everything optimized to be able to handle the influx. It's quite a few. Obviously, when we start opening up, there's quite a few people that want to get the limited space that's available. Uh, so,
Yeah. I mean in previous years it'd be like hours and they're all sold out. And it kind of reminds me of like we've been chatting with like Stephen Tupper with the Cape Cod Commission. We're talking about like traffic and stuff like that, which of course it's physical motor vehicles, this is digital traffic. But it kind of touches on that ongoing Cape Cod specific issue where the infrastructure has to be built to facilitate the largest amount of people that come in the year, which can be like millions of people for something, or and then meanwhile the year-round population is like a few tens of thousands.
yeah,
So even in the digital space, you see that as well, where it's like you have to facilitate these huge numbers, but it's just for like a day or a week, depending on like reservation systems.
yeah, yeah. In this case, it's the first few hours. There's tens of thousands of people that are trying to get in. We've been we'll be using a wait room again, so that way people know when it's their turn to there'll be an estimate as to how long it's going to take for them to move through the queue in order to be able to make reservations. And we appreciate all of our customers' patience during that time frame, but it's just the volume of people that are trying to get, as I said, that's the space that's available. And of course, everyone wants to get you know, the Friday at 12 noon boat, and there's only so many spaces on the Friday 12 noon boat. So uh, then they have to look around to see what the next closest one. I would recommend that any of our customers, when they do go through and they don't get their preferred times, is that they should wait list, because the wait list matches if an opening occurs. If the number of wait list matches over the course of a year is quite substantial. So it's clearly a great feature for our customers to use.
All right. Any other like tips and tricks for navigating the reservation process that we should be aware of now for anybody who's listening in, trying to learn a little bit more about how to navigate it, or anything that may have tripped people up in the past you want to maybe explain now or kind of get out there?
So, unlike in the past when we opened up in the early morning hours, we made the decision that we were going to be opening at 8 o'clock, so that way people didn't have to get up in the middle of the night to try to get in line. And just so everyone knows, we cleared a queue prior to the opening at 8 o'clock. So it does no good to be jumping on at 3 o'clock in the morning, because you're going to be cleared out of the queue before we reopen it. So, but we're doing that at 8 o'clock. Our reservation office, meanwhile, will be staffed, so that way if people need to help with their password and PIN for their accounts, they can contact them, or I'd recommend that they should be checking ahead of time to make sure that they know their passwords and PINs, and if they don't, then they can contact our reservation office, and they'll get that information to them.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I remember years in the past doing news here, hearing stories about people who've been logging in for hours ahead of time, trying to game the system, or rather, I guess that's just the way it worked at the time. But it's interesting to see. I believe so. You've been doing a lot of upgrades in general with like some of the new website stuff and some other like tools and features. Do you mind kind of giving us a quick summary of how things have been going in terms of maybe the digital fronts? I think there've been discussions of an app as well. But please correct me if I'm wrong, but can you give me a general summary or a review of how the digital expansion's been going for the Steamship Authority?
Yeah, so we were working on a new website, and accompanying that was going to be a mobile app as well. Back in September, we did put a pause on that project because we were to the point where we needed to be concentrating our efforts on making sure that the openings here go as smoothly as possible. And the same people that would be involved in both of these, they only have so much time. So We did put that on pause, and we will be revisiting that, later in the spring to see about rolling that out. I think there's a benefit to be able to get that new site out there, so that way people can easier access to try to find things.
Mhm. All right, sounds good. Yeah, even as it stands now, I have the website open on the side as well. I know that you guys can like sort it by like island trips and stuff. So there's a lot of useful widgets.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody seems to just be more and more online as of late. We've been talking with the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority as well. Tom Kerr, the administrator there, and he's been very much so highlighting how much they've been trying to push more online and with apps and their smart dart service and things like that. So it's interesting to see. Recently as well, I believe I had seen that the Steamship Authority is going to be taking on like ads again when it comes to some of the steamship stuff. I wanted to ask a little bit more about how impactful that is from like a financial standpoint, because you guys, I believe, they're 100% just fare driven. So I assume that the decision to like stop doing ads at one point and then going back on, it's a huge amount of revenue for you guys. Do you just kind of talking a little bit more about the impact that has for you, the services you guys provide, improving the service for people who are passengers?
Yeah, so a lot of the advertising we do is obviously for the local businesses, the island businesses. So as the the day trippers or the weekly visitors, they know that there's an opportunity to whether it's to go out someplace to dine or events or whatever. This past year, there was a couple issues that came up regarding the advertising program. So the advertising program was suspended, but the board did revisit it at the last month's meeting and agreed that we should reinstitute it. We have ads on our website that cycle through. We have ads on our vessels and at some of the terminals. Yes, we are essentially, 100% fare box. We're unique in terms of a public transportation agency for that to happen. I think somewhere around $100,000, I think was my recollection as to what we brought in advertising revenue.
hmm Yeah, it definitely has like a big impact. So it's interesting to see, and yeah, we'll look forward going into 2025 to see how things are going on that front. Just in general, we're about coming up on time, but I just wanted to ask, like, are there any other kind of like major goals or things we wanted to highlight, especially as we're kind of shifting through? We're swearing in our state representatives and some other state house people, and just wanted to ask, do you think that they need to, do they need a kick in the pants or anything on public transit? Do you think you guys are well listened to by Beacon Hill or some other stuff you wanted to highlight for them who might be listening now? Have the lawmakers been plugged in, and do you think doing the right thing when it comes to Cape Cod's public transit?
Yeah. So yes, we do engage with the local delegation on a number of items of interest to us, and we appreciate their support up at the State House. We do look on the federal level for funding opportunities, and the federal delegation has been very receptive to supporting our applications. Um, so that's it's a good thing to be able to have the support of not only the state but the federal delegations going forward. So
Mhm. All right, awesome. Now, last question before we get this wrapped up. I wanted to ask, you just reminded me, I was talking with Cape and Island State Senator Julian Sear recently, and they had it highlighted where potentially whale restrictions on speed, so the high-speed ferries might be impacted for the Steamship Authority because the federal regulations that they're trying to institute would protect North Atlantic right whales who are critically endangered. It would be reducing the speeds for some of the Steamship Authority. Just wanted to ask, have you been in conversations with Sear or some other people about that? Are you looking into that currently as part of the general study process about how that might impact?
yeah, so we 2 years ago we submitted a letter um, opposing not we're in support of protecting the right whale. Let that be set up front. However, the data shows that there is no right whales in the Nantucket Sound. Our captains over 50 years, we haven't, there's been no reported sightings. Um, and the regulations as proposed, we pointed that out, that there's no sightings, but that if there were, we would abide by any speed restrictions. But we also pointed out the devastating impact it would have on the island communities, particularly Nantucket. As you said, high-speed service for 7 months of the year would be not feasible. It's not economical to run those vessels at only less than 10 knots. Um, Even on conventional ferries, instead of being able to make 3 round trips a day each, they'd only be able to make 2 round trips a day to Nantucket. So, the amount of goods that we could bring over, and we carry all the fuel, the food, the medical supplies, everything that goes over, that's consumed on the island, comes to us. So, it'll be a challenge. It'd be a challenge to be able to do it, but it would have a devastating impact on the islands. Uh, there's a dynamic zone that if, for instance, a whale was spotted in Buzzards Bay, excuse me, in Cape Cod Bay, the zone would extend into Nantucket Sound, which doesn't make sense. And we pointed those things out to in our letters. NOAA did forward the regulations for final rulemaking to the Office of Management and Budget, and we did provide additional testimony to that along the same lines of of what I just pointed out. They stopped taking testimony for it, and at this point, there's no word as to whether they're going to be revising the regulations, approving the regulations, or sending it back. I know Nantucket did a study that showed that it was well over $100 million of economic impact to the island. I think it was $250 million, I think was their number that UMass had come up with. And the federal regulations are that if any of this proposed regulations exceeded $100 million, that a fuller study needed to be performed. And when it was originally submitted for rulemaking, they had an estimate of $48 million in economic impact, and that's for the entire East Coast. So it just doesn't sound right on the face of it. And clearly, Nantucket alone is well over the $100 million.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you for the update on that front. We spoke with Select Board Chair Brooke Moore for Nantucket. She mentioned how like especially even just like school sports, it would just like shut down school sports
Yeah,
because it would no longer become feasible to be able to go to events and then come back within the same day, or 24 hours even.
yeah.
But that pretty much that's about all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight for our listeners while I still have you? Even just general stuff you're excited about for 2025 or warnings for the reservation system?
Yeah, no, again, the reservations opening up here, and it's on our website for those that want to see the dates and times and when we open. And we appreciate everyone's patience as they go through that, because I can assure you there's more than one person trying to get in at the same time. So
Thank you very much, Bob. For those who are interested as well, we have the link below in the description for this segment that you're listening to for people who want to learn more about the Steamship Authority, what's going on, as well as check out the reservation time. So, Bob, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It has been a pleasure.
thank you, Grady. Okay, bye now.